In the meantime, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell was telling me that this whole spending measure that the president harpooned, well, the president knew about it, caused a little bit of a dust-up. Listen to this. The president, meanwhile, is looking at this $1.3 trillion spending measure, wants to rescind a lot of that spending. Mm-hmm. Are you okay with it?
Well, he agreed to it. You know, he was involved in the negotiation and signed the bill.
But he warned, I'm never going to do this again.
Yeah, but we had an agreement with the Democrats, and I don't think
so
you
you're
can...
surprised by what he said when he came out and criticized?
You can't make an agreement 1 month and say, okay, we really didn't mean it.
Oh, no, he didn't. Yes, he did, actually. That was a surprising reaction from the Senate Majority Leader who said that big display. Remember when the president had the $1.3 trillion spending measure that the House and the Senate worked out to keep the government lights on through the end of the fiscal year, that the president, certainly his people knew about it, and he didn't really take too kindly to the president then saying, don't you do this again. I will never sign something like this again. I don't know what the real deal is here, but that did not sit well with the Senate Majority Leader, who says that right now just coming back and rescinding a lot of that. Easier said than done, and he's not really expecting the president to do that, doesn't think he should do that. Kentucky Republican Congressman Thomas Massie on all of that. Congressman, do you think the president then did this for show, that when he had this big White House event and he pointed to that omnibus spending measure and saying that he was shocked and disillusioned, but he signed it only because it would boost our military? Did you believe that?
I think he was put in a box by a really bad process here in Congress. But this rescission thing, you know, please don't shoot the messenger, because I am a conservative, but I'm going to tell you, it's a fairy tale, just like the balanced budget amendment that we voted on last week.
What's the fairy tale, Congress? Which one?
Well, they're both, one's Easter Bunny and one's Santa Claus. But
which one? What are you talking about? The president trying to rescind it, or what?
Yeah. Well, the fact that even Congress would rescind anything. Look, if they rescind anything, it's going to be peanuts compared to the $1.3 trillion omnibus. But here's something important, Neil, that I'm not hearing anybody talk about. We're already 7 months into this fiscal year. In 5 months, on September 30th, there has to be another spending bill. And I predict here on your show that Congress is going to cut, copy, paste that $1.3 trillion omnibus and extend it past the election. And the president's going to sign it if we don't do something right now this month to stop going down that path.
I think I read from Mitch McConnell that he didn't like being thrown under the bus here. I could be overinterpreting this, but that the president or his people certainly were very much aware of what was in that thing. And maybe the president wasn't, and he did find out about it. But it kind of made others wince, because they had all agreed to sort of jump off that high spending cliff together. And lo and behold, the president last second pulls a fast one on. That's their interpretation. Is that yours?
There is a lot of political theater here, not just at the White House, but there's plenty of it here in the Senate and the House. Like I say, the balanced budget amendment that we voted on last week, that's political theater. But instead of blaming each other for what happened with the omnibus, why don't we start talking about what we need to do before September 30th when this omnibus expires? Because are we going to throw each other under the bus again and call each other a big spending, Republican when we extend?
Well, are Republicans worried about that, sir? I mean, the 40th member, the 40th incumbent in your party has indicated, Congressman down in Pennsylvania, that he wants to leave now, I guess in the next few weeks. Forget about waiting for the election. That's 40 Republicans who are getting out of Dodge, I guess, while they suspect the getting's good before the blue wave. What is it?
I think that's 40 better Republicans we could elect in the primaries, frankly, because until you get 218 conservatives here, you're not going to change this spending problem. Look, we've got 230-some Republicans, but we don't have 218 conservatives. So when I see 40 Republicans leave, I say that's 40 chances to get a real conservative up here that can solve this problem. Or 40 chances to get 40 more liberal-minded folks, right? Yeah, I think if the president were in an election today, he would win re-election, certainly against Hillary Clinton. I hear about this blue wave. We'll see if it's coming. But frankly, we need a wave inside the Republican Party where we take out some of these faux conservatives and get some real conservatives, because they're going to extend the omnibus on September 30th. I'm predicting it here on your show.
But you would vote against that. If that came up for a vote, you yourself would vote against it.
I would absolutely vote against it. There were 90 of us in the Republican Party who voted against the omnibus. I would contend only one of those 90 should be the next speaker. There are 145 Republicans who
All right, so that
were
would not include Steve Scalise or Kevin McCarthy, the two most rumored names to be Paul Ryan's replacement. So you don't like either of them?
It's not personal. There are 145 who are disqualified because they voted for the omnibus. Those are two of them who are disqualified, in my opinion. They can't solve this problem if they were part of the problem.
All right. Congressman, thank you very much.
Thanks,
it's
Neil.
rare that I get unequivocal answers out of someone, so I was a little startled. Congressman, thank you very, very much.